Hey, Braves Country! Braves Country HD is bringing you Braves Country Baseball. Braves Country comes to you every Tuesday night and Friday night, and 2 bonus games every week. Hi, I'm Mac McGee, and we'll be bringing you play-by-play, pitch-by-pitch, your Atlanta Braves. It's free to listen. Please like and subscribe. YouTube.com/@Braves Country. Braves Country Baseball for the fans, by the fans.
You're in Braves Country.
All right, Braves Country. Let's get into the curse that was. Chicago Cubs fans like Tones, and I'm sure many generations that you are related to and lived around and whatnot. Tones from the Chicago area. I thought this would be a fun one to put together in our Once Upon a Pastime series and talk about the curse that was. Now, do you have any idea who that is on your screen? I don't think most people would recognize him.
That's not Mordecai Brown, is it?
No. He was kind of a husky fellow. 3 Fingers Brown, you mean?
Yep.
What a wild story that guy had. Hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about him today. But for folks who don't know about Mordecai 3 Fingers Brown, he cut a couple of fingers off in a farming accident. Anyways, helped his spin on his pitches, and the rest is Hall of Fame history. That is Merkle, Fred Merkle of the New York Giants.
Oh, yeah.
And though I believe a lot of folks always point to the Cubs curse starting in 1945 with the Billy Goat, et cetera, Giants fans, a lot of National League fans pointed to Fred Merkle as the beginning of the end. So take you back to 1908 real quick, y'all. In September against the Cubs and the New York Giants and the New York Giants and the Chicago Cubs were in a pennant race, a true pennant race, not like we have today where you win the pennant, you go to the World Series, you don't win the pennant, guess what, you're out.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a play in a critical game against the Cubs on September 23rd, 1908, towards the end of the season, where the short of it is Fred Merkle was standing on first. There was a ball hit to the outfield. The winning run scored for the Giants. Because Merkle never ran and touched second base because the crowd came onto the field in celebration, eventually the Cubs wrestled a ball away. There's still an argument on whether or not it was the real ball, but they found a ball and came running up and they touched second base. And of course, this is before video, so you go off a lot of people's accounts. They touched second base after Merkle had not touched second base, and making it a forced play. They got a ruling from the umpire that day because they did something very similar had happened a few weeks earlier. They called the game no contest, replayed the game. Cubs won. They ended up winning the pennant because of that play, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Had they ruled that he was safe and the run had scored, the Giants would have won the division. The Cubs go on to win the 1908 World Series, and that was the last World Series they won until 108 years later with 2016, which most folks remember at this point. The other thing was the Billy Goat. Do you want to go over the Billy Goat?
Yeah, so the Billy Goat, interestingly enough, McGee, and to me, the coolest thing about the Billy Goat actually stems from the owner of the Billy Goat and the story he made from it. So The owner was William Cianis, and that's a key name around here because the Billy Goat actually led to, we'll get into the curse of the Billy Goat on the field in a minute, but there's actually a Billy Goat tavern nowadays as well in the Chicagoland area. They got a chain of Billy Goat taverns, and it's from the owner of the original Billy Goat that he brought to the game as well. So I thought that was interesting. And they have good food and tasty drinks, man. So little bit of history about the owner of the Billy Goat there who brought the Billy Goat. But the Billy Goat is curse, obviously, as you alluded to. 1945 it took place. And, this is where you get the name Murphy Bleachers Bar out there and other things named Murphy. As the owner, William Cianis, his pet goat, was named Murphy. And during game 4 of the World Series, Murphy the GOAT was bothering other fans and just kind of causing a riot in game 4 of the World Series. Could you imagine, McGee, being in your chair and just seeing a GOAT and seeing a rambunctious GOAT at that? I mean, you're in a baseball stadium, right? So pretty interesting stuff there. So obviously the ushers and attendants at the game say, hey man, you got to get yourself and your GOAT out of here. You've been disrupting enough people at this point in time. So then Cianis, the owner of the Billy Goat, outraged, stormed out of there and said, you guys will never win again. The Cubs won't win anymore. You're kicking me and my pet out of here. This is bananas. You guys aren't going to win.
Imagine bringing a goat to a game and expecting to get in.
Right. How did they let him in?
It's a different time. It was a different time.
It's crazy that they got in to begin with. So,
right.
Imagine.
How dare you kick my goat out? How dare you bring a damn goat? What are you talking about?
Even in modern day baseball, bringing your dog to the game, I think they only have, one day a year where you can bring your dog? This average Joe, William Cianis, is
it's advertised.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah.
They normally call it Bark in the Park, and all the stadiums tend to do it. I want to say the Braves do it twice a year. They do it one in the spring and one in the summer. The one they pick in the summer is usually like bloody hot. Like everyone's like, I don't want to go to the stadium. All right, well then go ahead and bring your dogs in. Have them all pass out from heat exhaustion. Because it's always a Sunday afternoon. Because we've always talked about going and taking our dog to the game, but it's just never going to happen. It's a Sunday afternoon, in the sun's high in the sky, 1,000 degrees, and they're usually playing like the Royals or something. Like it's never got like we're not driving all the way up there to do that now.
Correct. Yeah, I don't blame you.
Finish up because I got something about that Billy Goat Tavern that I want to add.
Yeah, absolutely. So yada yada yada. Long story short, many interpreted William Cianis saying the Cubs will never win again, meaning a National League pennant ever again for as long as he lived. So to follow that up, the Cubs lost the 1945 World Series to the Tigers, and obviously they weren't in another World Series until just 2016, and they had a couple of chances along the way as well. 1969 against the Mets, the Cubs lost the Black Cat pennant game. Remember that? That was crazy. And then in 1984, the Cubs' first postseason appearance since 1945, the Padres took them out. The Bill Buckner incident where the ball went in between his legs with the Red Sox. He was on the Cubs and the Red Sox. So just a lot of, 1998, Sammy Sosa was the MVP, but then they were swept later in that postseason. The 1989, the Giants beat them after the Cubs won. In 2001, the Cubs lost to the Cardinals. We all know what happened with the Marlins and the whole Steve Bartman thing. So, McGee, it was just time and time and time again, even through 07 and 08 with the Lou Piniella days, 2015 when the Cubs got swept by the Mets. There was just a lot of weird instances throughout all of those games. And the Mets was first baseman in 2015 was named Daniel Murphy, and he joked, not the first GOAT named Murphy to end the Cubs postseason hopes. Of course, the Billy Goat was named Murphy as well.
Yeah, so one of the things, as we'll dive into a lot of the stuff that you just kind of laid out there. So first of all, this Billy Goat Tavern, I find it very interesting. So it opened up in 1934, because when I first read about this story, I never dove into the Billy Goat Tavern until a few days ago. And I was curious, did he open the tavern because of the Billy Goat, or was this already? No, it was already a thing. Been open 11 years. And evidently he opened it on a bounce check. $205. He bought the tavern, and the proceeds that he made that weekend covered the bounce check in time to be able to stay in business, right?
That's insane.
The funny thing is this: in 1944, evidently Chicago was the home of the 1944 Republican National Convention. And he drummed up business by putting a huge sign in the window that said "No Republicans allowed," and evidently they flooded the damn bar demanding service. So I don't know what his actual political standings was, if this was just reverse psychology. I don't know. But anyways, it worked, and it kind of put them on the map. And then the next year, they're in the World Series, and the rest is history, right? Something to be mentioned about that curse. So in 1908, you had the Merkle boner, the big controversy. The Cubs had won back-to-back World Series. It was 1907 and 1908.
Yes.
They make the pennant. They win the pennant in 1910, lose to the Red Sox. 1918, lose to the Babe Ruth Red Sox. That's a famous Red Sox team that it was the final championship team for the Red Sox for many years. In 1929, they win the pennant, but lose to the Yankees. Of course, this is 2 years after the 27 Yankees. This is one of the greatest runs in sports history. In 1932, a lot of folks remember the called shot. A lot of folks don't remember it. It took place in Wrigley Field against the Yankees. Babe Ruth's famous called shot that a lot of folks think that he did. A lot of folks says that he didn't. And it's like one of the famous sports writers said, of all the people that contend one way or the other, if Babe Ruth actually called that shot against the Cubs, the sheer number of people that claim they were at that stadium, he famously said, I forget the sports writer's name, but he said, if as many people were at that stadium watching that game as they have told me in my lifetime, Wrigley Field would seat 500,000 people, right? So, there's always someone saying, "Oh, I saw it. Oh, I didn't see it. No, he didn't do it. Yes, he did do it." But still, this is all leading up to the 1945 World Series with the Billy Goat. By the way, Billy Goat was named Murphy for folks that are wanting to cure it. And I do wonder if that was intertwined with Murphy's Law. I haven't seen anything on that, but it is interesting. That's why he possibly named it that. But then it's like you were laying out. So you get past 1945, and he's throwing the curse. And he's saying they're never going to play in the World Series again. Never going to World Series. There's a lot of argument on whether or not he meant in his lifetime, or if he meant ever, or if he meant as long as they were in Wrigley Field. And if you ask 5 people, they'll give you 7 different answers. But anyways, it's interesting that there was already a curse that was little talked about with Fred Merkle's boner. But once the Billy Goat thing happened, then everyone started talking, well, they've already been cursed. All right. Before that, it was, man, they've been really good and just couldn't get to the championship. Billy Goat thing happened. All of a sudden, Fred Merkle's curse pops up. So, laid out all that. I want to take you to 1969. The famous Shea Stadium event where the Mets, who were the terrible Mets at this time.
The Black Cat.
The Black Cat walks in front of Ron Santo on, I think I have a picture of it. The Ron Santo is standing on deck, and I believe I have it. Give me 1 second, I'll find it. But yeah, here it is. Okay. And he's standing on deck, and they share me go ahead and share this for you real quick. He's standing on deck, and then out of nowhere, here comes Santo, Black Cat, and of course, the Black Cat curse. That thing that's something a lot of people don't talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, it was a thing. People really believed in these types of things.
Mm-hmm.
So this Black Cat walks in front of the dugout, in between Santo and the Cubs dugout, and the Cubs end up collapsing in September. Mets go on to win the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
1984. I don't know how familiar you are with all this stuff because it's a little before your time. 1984, they play the San Diego Padres in the NLCS. They're up 2-0. I remember I was pulling for the Cubs because back then you got TBS at night, you got the Cubs during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Cubs at that point, as a kid, they were my second favorite team. Shortly after that, I was not allowed to watch them because my grandfather was like, we're watching double headers all day long. Got to go out and do chores. All right, fair enough. But at that time, I was still sneaking in there watching the Cubs during the day. And so not only are they up 2-0, best of 5 series goes back to the West Coast, and the Cubs lose the next 3 games. And in Game 5, Leon Durham, the first baseman, botches an easy ground ball that leads to a 4-run inning that won them Game 5. But before that, the Cubs had the lead. Now, how does this intertwine with other things? 84, Leon Durham. People were talking about that for a couple of years until Bill Buckner, who was an ex-Chicago Cub, was on the Boston Red Sox, and he had a very similar play happen to him that everybody still talks about this day. Leon Durham's lucky that Bill Buckner came along and did what he did in the World Series, or people would still be talking about Leon Durham's botch in the NLCS. The other thing that saved him, too, was all those games were being played during the daytime.
Mm-hmm.
So not as many people saw them.
Correct.
And then you get, what was the next one that I had? Okay, the Bill Buckner. And then 1989, this isn't really curse-like, but I do think that when you're a fan of a team, and our buddy the fireman that comes on the show from time to time, he's been a diehard Cubs fan for as long. We grew up friends just before high school, and he was a Cubs fan then. I was a Braves fan then, and that hasn't changed. And he became a Cubs fan. The reason why I'm a Braves fan is because you got it on the Superstation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think what it came down to, I want to say his parents wouldn't let him watch TV at night, but he could watch the Cubs during the day when they weren't there, right?
Right.
So everyone's got a reason why they like their team. But anyways, they are up, or they are tied 1-1, leaving Wrigley, heading to San Francisco. And back then you played the first 2, and then you would play 3. And then I think they had just gone to the 7-game series in the NLCS. Before that, it was best of 5. And that had only been like a few years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all they had to do was win 1 game to get it back to Wrigley. They lose every one of those games in which the bullpen blew the damn game. Games 3, 4, and 5, the bullpen blew the game every single game. And then I do know that you're old enough to remember the Bartman.
Oh, Steve Bartman.
So can you take us through what you were thinking at the time? What was going through your mind as a young lad, Cubs fan, so damn close, and then the Steve Bartman play?
I actually remember my parents being at the game, and I was dropped off at my grandma's house by my parents in my Cubs stuff, watching the game with my grandma, who was a lifelong Cubs fan, my brother as well, and my aunt. And we were just kind of sitting watching TV, And for those Cubs fans out there that know, and that, they know this, before the Bartman play happened, Alex Gonzalez, the Cubs shortstop, let a routine grounder get by him, and he had a very good fielding percentage that year. Ground ball gets past him. Couple pitches later, the Bartman thing happens, and I think the crowd is already so
Yeah, I
mad
think
over.
everybody's forgotten that Alex Gonzalez thing.
Yep, everybody's forgotten him because everyone was so mad from that. Everyone was so fierce from that Moises Alou helped feed the Bartman beast, because Moises Alou goes into the stands, puts his glove up. Bartman is actually listening to the game. Steve Bartman is listening to the game in his earphones and watching the game. So in his ear, the volume is a couple seconds behind. So he doesn't even realize what he does initially until a couple seconds pass. Bartman reaches up, and the ball goes into his hands right over the outstretched Moises Alou, our left fielder at the time's glove. And Moises throws his glove to the ground, starts throwing a temper tantrum, points at Bartman, saying, "What are you doing?" You could tell every other word out of Moises' mouth is a cuss word. Now, physics to this date will say he probably didn't even have the best of chance at catching the baseball, Moises Alou. But the reaction from Alou, the heat that Alou gave to Bartman, the importance of that play after Luis Gonzalez, or after Alex Gonzalez's error, it just built up so much anger, so much frustration in this big of a game that Bartman was a scapegoat. Bartman ultimately had to leave the game. And like I said, it wasn't until a couple seconds after the play happened where he started looking around and he's going, "Me?" And the fans around him are going, "Yeah, buddy." Sadly, it doesn't look like it's going to end.
So bad for this guy. I mean, I'm telling you, man. So by then, I'm not a Cubs fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was pulling for Chicago because I didn't want the Marlins to win.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want the Marlins to win because I was still sore over 97, where Livan Hernandez strike zone was the size of the panhandle.
Mm.
So I was still like, nah, I know, I'm done, man. No, let's go. Come on, Cubs. And I really also wanted to see, I think something that a lot of people forget about that whole thing. I wanted to see the Cubs and the Yankees in the World Series, which is who was awaiting the National League winner.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, that would be incredible.
Yeah.
For not only for the Cubs to be able to have a chance to break their curse, but what if they did it against the Yankees?
Oh, man.
Because this was this 03? Yeah, this is 03.
Yep.
This was the year before. So the Red Sox curse still was. Remember that was the same week that, as they say, Aaron Stinkin' Boone hit that home run against Wakefield. Was it Wakefield?
Yep. Wakefield.
He drew in too long. I don't know. Anyways, he hit that home run to send them to the World Series, and everyone was. I mean, they were just up in arms. They what was the guy's name they fired? Grady Little. So all that was going on the same week as this ridiculousness takes place.
Mm-mm. And I just can't believe that, my parents were actually at that game, and took them a while to recover, especially my pops. It was just one of those things that was such a brutal loss for Cubs fans. And again, Bartman, that baseball ended up going for thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the guy who won it blew it up. He blew up the baseball, the whole Bartman baseball, after paying like hundreds of thousands of dollars for it. It's like, you can't make this stuff up. It's crazy.
Right, which I thought was a little goofy, but I mean, I guess you got the right to do with whatever you want to do with it, but I thought the
Yeah,
whole thing. I don't know.
I agree with
Like
you.
the
And
idea of destroying, even if it's bad history. I don't like the idea of destroying history.
no, and the other interesting thing is, quick to allude to it. You brought up the Bill Buckner thing. Some people might be wondering, well, wasn't Bill Buckner on the Red Sox when he let that ball between his legs? Yes, but the funny thing is, And the crazy thing is, Bill Buckner was wearing, he got traded from the Cubs to the Red Sox, and he kept his Cubs batting gloves, and he was wearing a Chicago Cubs batting glove underneath his baseball fielding glove when he let the ball go through between his legs. And that's why people think that
Well,
the
yeah,
first,
I can't remember people talk. There was an article out at the time or something that I remember they were calling it the double curse. They're basically saying you can't put Red Sox and Cubs in in the same glove. Something is bound to happen terribly.
mm-hmm.
Which obviously is a bunch of nonsense, but now I still say that I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little stitious. I don't know if I'm mixing Red Sox and Cubs and hoping two negatives are not going to always make a positive, no matter what they tell you.
Yeah, especially with these historic quote unquote curses, right? I mean, as you said, there was some nasty Red Sox and Cubs moments, and both overcame eventually, but it took him forever.
Yeah, so they see. There's a couple other things that another one for Braves fans. Braves fans probably don't remember this, and I don't think I wouldn't call it curse like, but it was in the footnotes of all the stuff that I read. 1998, the home run chase. Sammy Sosa wins the MVP for the National League, right?
Mm-hmm.
But still, how insane is that Sosa won the MVP, but McGwire got the home run record? That's a different argument for a different day.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all excited heading to the playoffs, and then they get swept by the famous 98 Braves, that the song was written about, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't look at that curse like, because I don't think that Cubs team was that great, but it still adds to it. And then 2004, the year that the Red Sox reversed their curse, and this is the year after the Bartman incident, the Cubs had a 2.5 game lead in the wild card on September 25th.
Mm-hmm.
They blew a lead and lost in extra innings on that day to the Houston Astros. They ended up losing 6 of their last 8 games, didn't make the playoffs. The Astros got the wild card, and they went on to go to the World Series, winning the NL pennant. Obviously, they faced that was it's so crazy that all this stuff happened at once. But that was the year in 04, or was that 05? I guess that was 05. That the White Sox went on to win the World Series against the Astros.
Mm-hmm.
So you had the Bartman incident in 03 that was, curse. 04, the Red Sox reversed the curse. 05, the Black Sox do the same. And now you're still sitting around going, well, dude, when is it the Cubs' turn? Like, what the hell's going on here?
And then we brought in Lou Piniella, and people thought they were going to be saved, and not much changed. A lot of choking continued.
The other thing that gets lost in the mix right there, too, is if you remember during that time period, and everyone chalked it up to the curse, which is just ridiculous, but Kerry Wood strikes out 20 Astros. And then it was his arm just fell off, along with Mark Pryor. Their arms just fall off after the 03 season that they, I guess it was 04 on, that they just turned into absolute just jello.
Yep, and a lot of people attribute Dusty Baker into over pitching those type of guys.
Oh, he absolutely did.
I think so
I don't
as
know
well.
if I blame him, because it was a different time period. No one thought about pitch count back then.
I agree with that statement completely.
But it was definitely you'd already seen Dusty Baker do some other dumb things when he had Barry Bonds and the Giants and whatnot. So you're already going, I don't know, is this guy know what the hell he's doing? What's going on here?
There were another crazy aspect of it. How many former Cubs ended up winning World Series during the Billy Go era? I believe there were 45 or more players, including some minor leaguers that they traded. Ryan Dempster, Dontrell Willis, Mark Grace, Mark Bellhorn. There were a lot of guys who were on the Cubs for the thick of their career, including Joe Girardi. And then as soon as they left the Cubs, it seemed like they were on their way to a championship. It was just the craziest thing. And then big free agents would come to the Cubs and they would do nothing, like an Alfonso Soriano. He had one good year, but just it was real.
All right. 2016 hits, and just as we put a bow on this, the emotions that had to been going through. And the craziest thing about that World Series, this was also the Cleveland Indians at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Not the Guardians. They were the Indians at the time.
Yep.
So don't at me. And Indians, Cubs come down to the final World Series game, which was an incredible game. Aroldis Chapman, I don't think, gets enough credit for that championship.
I agree.
But the stage is yours, sir. Tell me what was going on in Wrigleyville.
Man, I remember it was just being crazy. It was being mayhem down there. The Cubs were down 3-1 in the series, McGee. You know as well as I do. That is really impossible. Yeah, I mean, everyone thought it was over. Even some of us Cubs fans, we were holding out hope, obviously. But, the realisticness of winning something like that against a team like the Indians, they won game 7, 8-7 in 10 innings in Cleveland. That was a cooler thing either. And I just remember I was in college at the time. I was about to graduate. And I just remember, man, I had some important stuff to do, but I halted all the meetings. I'm like, I'm watching this game. I'm not missing a sliver of it. And there was a little bit of a delay in that game as well, if I remember correctly. So it delayed it. The Cubs won it in the middle of the night. And I just remember when that ball hit Anthony Rizzo's mitt at first base, I was just sitting there thinking to myself, man, I was so cheesy. I was so happy after living through the Bartman thing, after living through the Sosa era, the Lou Piniella era. I thought we'd maybe never see the day. And then being down 3-1 to Cleveland, I'm like, man, are we really going to blow this? And McGee, the coolest part about it was my grandma was alive through the Billy Goat curse era. All she kept saying, she wanted a Cubs World Series. They ended up winning that year, and my grandma passed a few months after she got to see them win a World Series. Truly crazy.
A bittersweet ending, right?
Exactly. She got to see her team win and the curse lifted.
Yeah, I can remember so many people that you would see video of generations dancing in the street and whatnot. I just thought that was, as a baseball fan, not necessarily a fan of the Cubs, but there's something. When I was a child, I did watch a lot of Cubs baseball, and it was cool to watch as not a fan, but as a fan of not only the sport, but also cool to see the Cubs. The only thing that got me, there was a friend of mine, and I'll never forgive her for putting this on social media. She has been a diehard Cardinal fan as long as I've known her, 20 plus years. And she was celebrating the Cubs championship. I'm like, that's a little too much, okay? That's a little too much.
That's a no-no in my book.
Oh, that's a huge no-no.
Mm-hmm. I don't care what curse it's been.
I can excuse any other fan base.
I agree with that.
Yankee fans were not looking in 2004 go, finally, man, they got it off the monkey off their back. Hell no. They were like, we got to go out and get more money. We got to crush their hopes.
Oh, man.
Have a great day, y'all.
Have a great one, Max.
Goodbye, sweetheart, well, it's time to go. We're back tomorrow with another show. Well, unless we're fired, we'll talk to you then. Goodbye, sweetheart, goodbye. Goodbye.
Guys and gals, it's time to go. We'll see you on the next show.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Thanks for listening to Braves Country Baseball. With Mac McGee, we're proud to bring you year number 3. Braves Country Baseball comes your way Tuesdays and Friday nights, and 2 more bonus games for a total of 4 games a week. You can also catch Braves Country, our daily sports talk show. We go live 3 to 5, 99.1 FM WQEE, Metro Atlanta. Other CBS, ESPN, and independent affiliates nationwide, and simulcast on youtube.com/@BravesCountry. Find Braves Country HD today wherever you stream. Your first choice for Southern sports and the deepest bench in sports talk.
Something of the 5th of September. Something of the 5th of September. She said a lot that I can't remember. Something of the 5th. Can I get another cigarette, please? Can I get another cigarette, please? Yeah, I know I live